Now we're going again. I really may not post that previous one. That may be one of those little close talks that we had. Okay. So the Monday, Wednesday class is going, now what about these close talks that she has with stuff? Okay, quick review. Remind me that before we drew the beautiful cycle of life, we talked about all of these beautiful things that growth hormone does in our bodies. Now, on game day, I'm going to ask you to know 4 or 5 of those functions of growth hormone. So what I would do if I were you is I'd choose 4 or 5 of those that you think are awesome. Like, I'm all about lipolysis. So that would be one that I seared in my brain because that's what I want growth hormone to help me do all the time. On page 79, that's when we jumped into the growth hormone response in women. Say, we got that, Miss McKay.
We got that, Miss
Nice.
McKay.
So now, moving on to the third hormone in the anabolic chain. What's that third one?
Insulin-like growth factor.
Okay, where does insulin-like growth factor come from? Your... Oh, blah, 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 blah. Come on. Liver. Thank you, Easton. Insulin-like growth factor comes from your liver. Okay, so what we know, let's actually read a few things together. All right, we see that insulin-like growth factor are these small polypeptides that come through your body, through your liver, after they have been stimulated by the pituitary gland from growth hormone. So we see that insulin-like growth factor has been shown to stimulate the secretion of its own binding proteins from within the muscle itself. So here's what we know. What was that? What is this? A receptor. What is the theory called that when all of a sudden, lock and key, very good, Kiana. So we see lock and key coming into play. Do we remember from looking at lock and key that some receptors might just like testosterone, some might just like insulin, but some of them
like multiple.
Like both. So here's what we need to know, and this is a beautiful thing. Whenever you Fab 5 train, you are not only stimulating testosterone, growth hormone, insulin-like growth factor, and managing your insulin, but whenever that insulin-like growth factor is cranked out from your liver, and it starts to penetrate the receptors in your body, it actually, almost like a domino within itself, can stimulate other receptors that are within the muscle to soak up more insulin-like growth factor. And we see this happening, the dominoes just keep falling. So it's interesting that insulin-like growth factor can actually stimulate more insulin-like growth factor. It's like this positivity chain that just keeps going on and on and on. So here's what we know. Go down. It's been shown that other factors other than Fab 5 training can also show improvements in insulin levels and insulin-like growth factor levels, such as nutritional status. Please tell me that you're understanding, and you've heard me say it 1,000 times, you can never out-train a bad diet. And whenever you are always, so remind me again, what are those anabolic chain?
Testosterone, growth hormone, insulin-like growth factor, and insulin.
Okay. If you are consistently consuming a diet that is jacking with insulin, tell me what a diet that jacks with insulin would look like. It would be
carb.
Super high, not just in carbs, but in sugar. Super high sugar consumption is going to always jack with insulin. And here's what we know. If you are stimulating all of these different hormones and you are jacking with insulin instead of stabilizing insulin, you cannot stay anabolic as long as you want to stay anabolic. Hey, in a perfect world, how long do you want to stay anabolic?
Forever.
Chronically anabolic. We need shirts that say that. I am chronically anabolic. That would be awesome. Would y'all buy those t-shirts?
Yes.
Chronically anabolic. That will save the pancreas thing that I keep talking about. So when we see these changes go on, this insulin level is really so important to everything we have going on. You've got to stabilize your insulin levels, which means that post-workout meal does not need to be alcohol and chips. You know, we've talked about sometimes on the days that we work out the hardest are the days that we feel like we, quote, deserve the crappiest food. So we've really got to pay attention to those things if we're gonna stay chronically anabolic, okay? Come over here with me and check this out a little bit more. All right, so I'm on the exercise response to insulin-like growth factor, left-hand column, page 81. Now let's think about this. Go down about halfway through that big first chapter, and it says it takes from 8 to 24 hours for IGF to be produced and released from the liver following stimulation by growth hormone. This is when we start to see the dominoes falling into place. Now, what's interesting is, where does growth hormone come from?
Anterior
Pituitary gland. And so we're seeing, we'll edit that out, okay? You know, isn't it funny? No editing allowed. It's beautiful. What we really start to see is that, have you all heard that your metabolic rate stays high after you have done high volume training? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. This is the primary reason why. Because from 8 to 24 hours, you are actually staying anabolic for your pituitary gland to send the message to your liver. That's when you have the potential to stay anabolic. Now, what I'm going to take a risk and say is that if you're consuming way too much insulin or too much crap afterwards to where you have the insulin spike and then the insulin crash, this is where you're cutting off your potential to stay chronically anabolic. So what I would like for you to think of this as, think about this. If I am stimulating either testicles or ovaries or adrenal gland from testosterone, if I'm stimulating pituitary gland, then I'm stimulating my liver to keep me chronically anabolic. I want to set the stage perfectly with my insulin levels so that I can stay there for that full 24 hours. Because you know what? In a perfect world, what am I going to be doing again 24 hours later? I'm going to be Fab 5 training again. A different body part, but that's how you stay chronically. Remember, show me chronic, what does it mean? Chronic, on and on and on, okay? That's how you stay chronically anabolic, is through managing those insulin levels. So if you're all of a sudden crushing your workout, going and eating your Fruit Loops as your post-workout meal, then you're cutting off this potential to stay chronically anabolic. Because remember, you'd stop being anabolic in a window before you're lighting the torch on that next anabolic beast moment that you're going to have. Does that make sense? Yes or yes?
Yes.
Yes? Chronically anabolic means managing your insulin levels. Because insulin can be an anabolic hormone. You guys, insulin actually, okay, you know how we keep going back to the strike of the match, the fire, the bonfire, all of this? Whenever you think about the analogy of the fire that we have used throughout this semester, what insulin can be is, you know, after you've had the fire going for a while and you end up with just the solid hot coals that are still, you could You can still put your hands on them and they're still warm, but when they're stoked up again, what could happen to the coals again?
Catch fire again.
They could catch fire again. Insulin should be those coals, those white warm coals that keep our body moving forward, chronically anabolic, instead of that drastic hot burn, slow fire put out. I mean, hot burn, fires out here because you didn't set the stage right. Does that make sense? Yes or yes?
Yes.
Or maybe no? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. I usually say yes or yes, but then I don't even give chance for a no. So everybody really good to go with that. Say got it when you got it.
Got it.
Nice.